It is September 8th, 2013. My name is David Quick. I'm interviewing Tony Senerchia for the DC Gardeners Farm Oral History Project, sponsored by the Neighborhood Farm Initiative and the DC Humanities Council. Tony, thanks for talking today.
Very well, thank you.
Could we start by you having to say your name and your address?
My name is Tony Senerchia, and I live at 1007 Sigsbee Place, Northeast.
Thanks. Right here in Brookland.
Yes.
Tony, could you start? We're going to talk a lot about gardening today, but could you start just by talking about your early life a little bit, where you were born, grew up, who your family was, that kind of thing?
So I was born in my parents' house on Otis, 13th and Otis, across from Bunker Hill Park, and I grew up there my whole life. And we always had a garden at the house, both vegetable and lots of flowers and shrubs and stuff like that. Always a little on the wilder side, because that's how my mom liked it. She didn't like too neat. And my mom was one of those people who always knew the Latin name of every plant. So that was always an interesting thing. And I don't know if it was because of that, but I also got involved further in scouting, so I was used to like the outdoors and learning the names of plants and uses and trees and things like that. So, so I've had a history with nature and gardening.
Okay. You were born in your house?
Yeah, in the house.
Was that because your parents chose to do it that way?
Yeah, also, but I was the fourth child, and so they were kind of hippies, so they had me at home and with a midwife. Okay. So, and then some of my other siblings as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many siblings are there?
There's 7 of us all together.
Okay. Great. So grew up here in Brookland.
In Brookland, yep.
I see on your paper you were born in early 80s?
Yes, yeah. 81.
So what are your memories of growing up in Brookland? Where'd you go to school?
I went to school at St. Anthony's, which is still there, and then later on for high school I went to Gonzaga downtown. So my memories, mostly I remember playing a lot, in people's backyards, and there weren't a lot of gardens, honestly. But there was one of our neighbors was a Jamaican, and he had gardens, and I remember one time eating some small peppers from his garden, and that was a bad idea. So
because
they were very hot. Yes.
How you doing?
Hi.
If you want me, let me know. I just figured I'd let you talk.
Okay.
But and I remember a lot of backyards being very overgrown. So it's always been, especially where I grew up, it was a very sort of rich area, obviously, for
in terms of income
life.
or
plant life.
Oh, okay.
Plant life. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
The neighborhood itself was. I always like to tell people when they ask about crime now that it's gotten much better since then, and there are a lot of improvements that I've seen over the years in Brookland. So I'm happy where it's going. I'm happy with the small plots that the Brookland Garden Club has done. I was actually involved with one of those on 12th and Newton by what's now the Long and Foster's. Used to be a mini mart, and as my Eagle Scout project, we redid those 2 gardens in coordination with Brookland Garden Club.
Oh yeah.
So that's how that one and the one up on 12th and Monroe, and I think there's another one, were the first 3 that were done here in Brookland. So before that, we didn't have the more beautified public space.
Yeah.
So the triangles and stuff.
Yeah.
So some of those were done also by my other family members, other relatives. So.
Okay. So your family has.
Well, I have family in Brookland. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was your family here? How long has your family been here in Brookland or DC?
So my mom. I don't believe she was born here, but she grew up here for a long time at 1014 Monroe Street.
Okay.
And then she grew up in in Pennsylvania and came back. So they've been here since, at least since her generation. Although, I can't remember exactly. Her mother might have been here with her aunt, or else they all decided to move here. I can't remember, but maybe my dad would be able to tell you. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so they've been there a long time. My dad's from New Jersey.
Okay. Were they part of that Italian community that moved here with?
No, they're Irish.
Oh, okay.
My dad's Italian.
Okay.
But they were actually, my mom's side was involved with the Brookland co-op, which used to be located where Yes Organic Market is now.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and that's how that actually I think came to be through my aunts.
When was that?
It's in the 80s sometime. I
Yeah.
can't remember. Again,
It wasn't. I mean, how long was that there approximately?
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
sure. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
being young, and then it closed. I was still young, so but it was
Yeah.
there at least 5 or 7 years,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But,
Okay. So, the house you grew up in with your siblings and your parents were gardeners,
Right.
vegetables and flowers.
Right.
Was that something your dad had done for a long time? Was that part of his?
I don't think so. I think I believe my grandfather, so my dad's father, did have a little garden in the backyard. There's some tomatoes and peppers and stuff like that. So he did have a little bit of it, but I think it was something that just started it was the times, in the 70s. They bought a broken down old, I think it was a farmhouse, and fixed it up and growing vegetables, and it was, they were rubbing their pennies together, so
Yeah.
anything they could do to help get by, I think it was that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How it started out, especially with the vegetables.
Okay.
And then, you find out it really tastes better, and so you get a liking for it, and then you don't want to give it up, so you do all the hard work. But it's fun work. It's fun work too. I mean, it's not only hard.
Yeah. And how were the kids expected to participate in it?
No.
Okay.
No, it was really it was kind of their thing,
Okay.
We participate in the eating, but when you have so many kids, it's kind of hard to control them. So it might have been maybe they tried. I don't know, but maybe they tried in the beginning and decided that wasn't a great idea.
So
I'm not sure.
So that wasn't something you did a lot of learning and helping as a young person.
Not really, no.
Okay.
But I was saying, I did find though that just being around, we picked up a lot of things, and so we could, little tricks they learned or things like that.
Such as?
Such as, well, I actually learned this later on, but an example would be like my dad always says from Nancy Boogle, don't miss the planting time. So things like that. Having your bed a little raised, always using a mulch, things like that. Covering the soil. So. But it was still it was always organic gardening. They never did use any sort of no sort of pesticide, but also no sort of fertilizer. But they would always, Mom was always making Dad stop the car to pick up bags of leaves or bags of grass from other people's houses or stuff like that. So that, because she knew the value of organic matter, which it's hard to get in an urban setting. Because you can't, you only have so much usually on your property. So instead of buying it, they would just find it where they could. And then pick that up and then compost it or just put it right on, depending. Or sometimes they'd run the leaves over with the lawnmower to get them cut up small and then put those in.
To make mulch.
Yeah, to make mulch. But it was very, kind of standard organic gardening. The cabbages over here and the, tomatoes over here and the, sort of blocked up. So not as interspersed. Although in later years they started to do that a little more, mixing things up where they are.
Companion planting.
A little bit instead of rotating, so
Yeah.
to rotate to avoid the worms and stuff, the nematodes.
Yeah. Sounds like you picked up a lot.
Well, I've read a lot since then, so I've done a lot on my own since having my own place to work. Well, what happened was actually I lived in Switzerland for 5 years, and there I had nowhere to garden, and I realized how much I'd missed it because I'd always helped do other jobs around people's houses, cutting grass and taking out problem trees or digging a garden bed if they needed help or putting in posts. And I found I missed it a lot, so when I got back here, I was kind of eager to get my hands in the dirt again. And then finally, when we got our house, I had somewhere to do it, so we're kind of voracious learners in my family. So we, study as much as we can about something and then have a theoretical knowledge of it, but it doesn't always pan out in practice, but we can talk.
Yeah. Okay. So as a young person, though, where you were it sounds like your folks were getting compost from wherever they could.
Well, they were making the compost, so they didn't get
the makings of the compost.
Yeah. And the kitchen scraps was always composted.
Yeah.
So we always had to do that. That was for our garden jobs. We definitely had to take the compost out to the compost bin and dump it in, which, when you're a kid, is kind of gross. But
yeah. What kind of work did your parents do as far as careers or paid work?
So my mom was a homemaker with all the kids. This is kind of
plenty of work
necessary.
There. Yeah.
And then my dad's a piano teacher. So
nice.
He's always been, and he teaches students in their homes.
Okay. So their life there in that house and their raising their family was 70s through 80s, 90s?
Yeah, till now.
Yeah, still.
They just sent the last one off to college.
Big family.
Yeah.
And so, DC, it sounds like they were living a pretty, I don't know, I'll use the word alternative lifestyle.
I would say so. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, DC that's not necessarily something that happens a lot in Washington, DC. Was that, did that feel different from the way a lot of people were living? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, we always felt a little different. Like, not to get racial about it, but there was one white kid who lived down the street, and then I didn't know any other white kids who lived nearby.
Yeah.
And we were we sort of got, it was funny, the kids would sort of joke about us like being a country or something, or not necessarily our neighbors, because our neighbors really liked us because our door was always open and we always had food, and we used to have, the garden at my parents' house used to be much smaller, and we had the rest of the backyard was to play in, and then when the kids grew up, they took over more of the backyard. But so those kids were always, it was more like in school, run into sort of the idea, because also in school there were very few white children. So we definitely felt like we were a little alternative and kind of little hippie children, sort of.
Yeah. But that was also part of the zeitgeist of that time a little bit, like organic things like that.
In the 70s, certainly,
yeah.
And then through the 80s.
What do you remember cooking with all that food? And what kind of stuff?
My parents?
Yeah.
Well,
what kind of food?
One hallmark of my house was the salads. So we would have these gigantic bowls of salads, and usually, I can't remember, I think we often ate them after dinner, because the reason was salad doesn't take up any room, so you can just, it's a palate cleanser or whatever. I think my dad may correct me on that one, but I think that's what it was. So we always had huge salads, and then it was a little later, my dad, they put in an asparagus bed, and so there was, no one goes home without asparagus. And then so he's always got a no one goes home season, right? So there's asparagus, and then there's the zucchini and summer squash, or yellow. He likes yellow zucchini better than yellow squash, but I do too. But and the peppers and tomatoes and all that stuff. So we'd have a lot of meals. I mean, we always had home cooked meals. It was very rare that we ever ate out anywhere. So, but we didn't always know what was from the garden and what wasn't. There's just we'd have food that was in the house and we'd get in the food in the
Right.
meal. But a lot of times when it was tomato season, we'd appreciate the tomato for the tomato, so have it raw or just slices of it, or maybe some oil. Or there's a dish where you cut up tomatoes and then drain them a little bit and mix them with mayonnaise, and it doesn't sound great at first, but it's like the best thing. If you add a little basil, mix it in with some pasta, it's like really amazing. You gotta try it. But like beefsteak, nice heirloom tomato. But you drain off some of the water because otherwise it's too wet.
Yeah.
So and then it makes like a cream. You don't know what it is. But
Yeah.
Not too much mayonnaise.
Does that have a name?
I don't think so. No. But it was good.
Yeah. Cool. So you were eating pretty well. It
Yeah,
sounded like.
I mean, yes, I've always thought that we ate very well at our house. Always. That was one of the things that my mom always did, was we had food. We had fresh cooked, from scratch food, everything, whole wheat, everything.
Yeah.
Whole brown rice, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And did that include what you took to school? Lunches?
Yeah, always whole wheat bread, So,
No Wonder Bread.
Yeah, no.
The big
I
crispy.
get a little jealous of kids sometimes. They get stupid whole wheat sandwich,
Does your mom bake the bread too?
No, she didn't. That was a little too. That was one of those lines. Because I've actually tried that since then here in my own house. I've gotten pretty good at baking the bread, but it's really quite a bit of work to have enough and then eat it, and then sometimes it doesn't come out in the way that's as useful as possible. So it's a little trickier, especially if you try and do all whole wheat. But I found some recipes. I just find that it's hard with the ovens. Like home ovens really aren't made for bread cooking, at least not harsh bread cooking.
Right.
But I do like to try and make bread sometimes. So I do that. Of course, now everybody's anti-gluten and stuff. So.
Yeah, that's the thing right now, right? No wheat, no gluten. Where do you have memories of where your parents got seeds and stuff like that?
I do not.
Okay.
I have, I think they just ordered them from magazines.
Okay.
So.
I mean, what kind of, were they doing, the burpee seeds from the hardware store or heirlooms?
In the beginning, I don't know. I know later on it's more like heirlooms, and they try to get. He has my dad will tell you exactly which tomatoes he buys because he finds they do well. So he'll just reel them off, and that's it. So he does know which seeds he wants. But I couldn't tell you what the motivation was behind it.
Yeah.
I know personally I try and get more sort of heirloom varieties and stuff. But my thinking sort of evolved since reading all the material, especially well, I guess we're gonna get into that in a minute. So we'll get there.
So it sounds like one other big part of your youth was being a Boy Scout.
It was indeed.
And was that something like you and all your siblings were you Scouts?
So my dad was the den leader for the Cub Scouts for a while, and my aunt, I think it was my aunt who started it. I'm not sure, but I think it was her, and then everybody else sort of got into it. And my brothers, I have two older brothers, and they did it for a while, and then they moved on into Boy Scouts. The youngest older brother is 5 years older than me, so I'm the next one.
What's the spread from oldest to youngest?
The eldest is 43. No, yes, and the youngest is 8. He'll be 19. So, but so quite a spread. But so they moved on into Boy Scouts. I started Cub Scouts once they were in there, and they sort of stopped that pretty quick. I think it was around like when high school started, but I went in. It was really my cup of tea. So I went in and quickly became like the leader of the patrol in the Scouts, and then I was the patrol leader for 5 years. I worked at the local summer camps and stuff down in Virginia. So So there's no gardening there, but
Yeah.
but so I got rather involved, and
Yeah.
I just barely missed my Eagle Scout, but I did all the work. I just
So it's easier to
Why-
I missed a signature, and then I didn't know that there was a 6-month period where you can, when you turn 18, that's supposed to be it, but there's actually a grace period.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know about it, and I just didn't. I still feel like that's one of the things about being an Eagle Scout is that you get your act together and you get the things done, and you don't like the deadline. So I just I guess I procrastinated and just missed it. So kind of a shame.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have all the knowledge, so I'm not too worried about it. It's just a type.
Yeah. Does DC have a decent scouting?
So DC as a
Community?
whole, yes.
Yeah.
Right now, Brookland doesn't have their Boy Scout troop, so the troop that I was in, which was based at St. Anthony's, is not there anymore. They
Okay.
have a Cub Scout troop, and I think they're trying to get a Boy Scout troop together again. But troops are they're generally centered around like a community
Yeah.
place. So in this place, a church like
Yeah.
St. Anthony's, but they don't have to be associated with the church,
Right.
because there isn't actually there is a religious aspect, isn't there? But yeah, so there is a good scout presence for sure in DC, but it's all over the place. It's not just here. Generally, I think sort of on the east side of the city, it's a little less
Yeah.
than on the west side, but that's it may be because of parental involvement or something like that, because that is an important part. Like
Yeah.
if, for instance, there were certain trips where we didn't have, this is getting away from gardening, but if we didn't have parents to take us to the place, we couldn't go on the trip. So it was like we'd have to scrounge around, and then sometimes my dad would jump in and say, okay, I can bring you guys.
Yeah.
But so it is something that relies on the parents to help,
Right.
in some cases, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. So.
Yeah. But that sounds like that was
Formative?
formative in a way that you were connecting to plants and the natural
Definitely,
world.
it definitely was. Like
Yeah.
I always enjoyed, learning. There's I have no idea which badges or whatever they are now, but I know there's some where you have to be able to identify trees by bark and leaf and fruit, and the same thing with plants, and there's all the animals, and so you really get you learn a lot about ecology and
Mhm.
stuff like that. There's certain merit badges, especially like at the camp where I work, where you learn about all those things. So it was just something they always pushed on us, and leave no trace camping is something we work on. So you sort of it's hard to come out of it without a bit of a reverence for nature.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned going to Gonzaga, and you grew up right down the street from the Franciscan Monastery.
Right.
Were you, sometimes having gone to a Jesuit high school myself, were there gardeners in either of those communities that you were connected with?
Not in Gonzaga, no, and then at the monastery, not until later.
Okay.
I always appreciated their gardens, though, which is it's a private garden, so it's interesting because it's free and open to the public, but it's a private garden, so it's not a community-run sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm
talking about
the inside the
yeah.
not in the back,
not the vegetable
Right.
gardens in the back. Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
Although one could go back there, well,
Yeah.
but and now as I'm part of the Franciscan Monastery Garden Guild, we do work, but we're not necessarily an integral part, except where it comes to the care of the formal rose beds in the front.
Mm-hmm.
They do have a landscaper, so it's a volunteer organization for people who want to be involved and help take care of the grounds there, and keep it looking nice so that it stays, because so the Franciscan Monastery is really their main place is in the Holy Land, and then this is a nice place to have. So if that they have here, but they don't necessarily have to keep those gardens. So if you know, if there's a problem with money, which I don't think there is, but if there were, you know, they might not put money into the garden. So we try and help out as much as we can to keep the gardens looking nice, so that it takes a load off of the friars, so they can spend the money in other places where they need to spend it.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about your involvement there when we get there.
Okay.
So, anything else you would say about growing up in Brookland or your formative years in DC? You talked about your neighbor whose hot peppers you ate. Were there other memories of neighbors and gardens in
I know
Brookland?
my cousin, who actually lives right across from Alex Matthews, they always had a garden, so they grew a bunch of stuff. There really weren't that many that I can think of. There weren't that many gardens when I was young.
Yeah.
Compared to now, I see a lot more gardens since that time. So most people just had lawns and, you know, overgrown backyards.
Yeah.
Some people had overgrown, and the people unfortunate enough to have bamboo, you know.
Yeah.
So, but there really wasn't that much vegetable garden, if that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There were some, you know, some ornamentals, some flowers, and other plants, but even that, not so much.
Yeah.
So, most of the people I knew who had a garden were related to me.
Okay.
So
how much of your family lives in Brookland?
it's actually not that many. I have that. Well, hold on. So I have that cousin who lives on Monroe Street, and I have an aunt who lives on Newton Street, and then my dad lives on Otis Street, and I have an uncle who lives next door, and I think that's it now.
Okay.
Well, I know my sister lives with my aunt right now, so. But some have come in and some have gone. So.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's not that many.
Yeah. But that's you don't meet a lot of people in DC who
grew up in DC.
Grew up and kind of just have that network of family members that keep close by.
Right. There are others who live in the city. They just don't live in Brookland.
Yeah. That's cool. What about you mentioned the co-op and your family being involved in the old Brookland co-op. Do you have any memories of that?
I remember like my uncle painting there were all the signs like frozen produce, you know, frozen, all that. My uncle did a lot of the artwork for that. I used to bag groceries there for tips. So when I was little, my cousin and I. So I remember we used to like to buy radishes. We were like little kids, 8 years old, eating a bag of radishes. So I remember that stuff. I remember sort of like the meat packing area.
And was it a proper co-op where people had to do work shifts and things like that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so, but I don't know. My dad might know.
Okay. Where did you go to college? Or what did you do after high school?
Goucher College.
Goucher?
In Baltimore. And I studied mathematics, so I did no gardening there. And then, like I said earlier, I went to Switzerland. After that, to study mechanical engineering.
Okay.
So, no gardening there either.
Sometimes engineers make good gardeners, though. So was that
the square foot gardener? He's an engineer.
That's right. So was that as you were thinking about what kind of work you wanted to do, was that where math led?
Yeah, that was the original idea. Was that Goucher had a 3-2 program with Johns Hopkins. You do 3 years at Goucher, 2 years at Johns Hopkins, and you can come out with 2 degrees. But it wasn't very well run somehow, and we started into it, but it just like I don't think anyone in my year or anyone I knew actually who started with that thought went through with it. So that didn't happen. So what I did was I ended up getting the math degree, always with the goal of doing engineering. So that was my goal of going to school. Although sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't have followed my dad's advice and become a forest ranger, but you know.
Did you get you did get the engineering degree?
No,
also?
I didn't.
Okay.
I got close, just like the Eagle Scout project. No, I got ill and I came back to the States actually. So
Okay.
So was what happened. I was in my last year.
To the States. So you went to Switzerland to get a
degree, yeah.
Okay.
In French.
In French.
Yeah.
A degree in French or
yeah. Well, the
French
whole
language?
school was in French.
Yeah.
So it would have been a French, well, an engineering. So I don't know a lot of the words in English that I know in French.
So while you were in Baltimore, though, you were right there in the city, another urban setting?
In Towson.
Okay.
So, and Goucher College is a very verdant place. So it also kind of gives you an appreciation for nature because you can walk around and there's beautiful grass, but also forest. It's surrounded by woods on all sides, and they have like an equestrian program and everything. So it's kind of secluded. You know, there's a duck pond and everything, and you kind of appreciate again nature there. Of course, it's well manicured, but
Yeah.
it wasn't an urban inner city sort of setting.
Okay.
So, and I wasn't involved with any gardening type projects when I was there. I did do some Habitat for Humanity, but not gardening. So.
Okay. And what took you to Switzerland, though? Why?
A girl.
A girl. Love.
Yeah. Well, I did a study abroad because I was in the 3-2 program in the beginning. I did a study abroad my sophomore year, which is not typical,
Yeah.
to Germany.
Uh-huh.
And I met a girl there, and then it ended up continuing and then she was Swiss.
Okay.
So she went back to Switzerland, I came back to the States, and then I eventually moved to Switzerland.
Okay.
Because I liked Europe, so
Mm-hmm.
it was fun. In Germany, I stayed my first month when I was at my school. I stayed in a barn. It was like, well, it was like, I mean, the way they have it there is the barn is connected to the house. So we were actually in the house, but the barn was sometimes you could hear the cows. So it was kind of interesting. But we didn't do any farming.
What part of Germany was that?
That was south of Munich, about half an hour on the train. It's called Prien am Chiemsee. So I speak German also.
So you liked Europe. You just have a...
I mean, it was nice. One thing I really appreciated about Europe was that, well, first in Germany, they were very, the city I was in, the town, I guess really, was called Tübingen, and it's south of Stuttgart. It's kind of well known.
Yeah.
But they have a big emphasis on their parks. So they like to have a nice park where people can, it's right in the city, people can go there and sort of not have the city right next to them.
Yeah.
So they can feel a little secluded. So they had a main city park sort of on the main street, and then they also had a park in the middle of the river there. So we spent a lot of time in those parks, and I really appreciated that. The other thing I appreciated a lot, because this is all southern Germany, and then Switzerland, which it connects right at the bottom.
Yeah.
Is that when you're in a town like that, or actually, unless you're in a large city, you can very quickly be in the country.
Right.
And I've always liked that. I don't know how long I'm going to live in the city. Although probably because of different expenses and stuff like that, and desires, it'll be a long time. But I would certainly love to live out further. I've always liked the countryside. So when I did live in Switzerland and in Germany, I also found that while I always lived in the cities, you never felt far away.
Yeah.
And then my parents loved to tell about when they came to visit me in Switzerland. I lived down and like right in the center of the old town, and right across the river, still in the town, there's a green pasture with sheep. So you could hear the bells from the sheep and the what's the word? Braying. Braying.
Okay.
What's the word?
For the sound they make?
Buying?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know the correct word for that, but so I always did like that, and I always have like that. I guess it's also part of Boy Scouts. So
Yeah.
I've always like, I love how in Switzerland you can drive 30 minutes and you're at a mountain. Like
Right.
it's not, and you
Right.
can go off on a hike. So they do have a large emphasis on nature being close. And we did, mushrooming and stuff there. So
And where in Switzerland?
Fribourg, it's
Okay.
south of Bern,
Mhm.
between Bern and Lausanne. So
And did you eat good food in Europe?
of course. So I can't. To be honest, it's hard to find the cheeses here at any sort of a reasonable price.
Yes.
But the cheese Gruyere that people are familiar with from Switzerland, that's the same canton, which is like a county. Fribourg is the capital of that canton, and then my girlfriend lived really close to Gruyere. So we would go to the castle of Gruyere and all that stuff, and have the fondues there, and you'd see the cows. They have something called désalpage, where they bring the cows down from the mountain because they send them up in the mountain in summer, and that milk is particularly like herby and strong, and it's nice. It's good stuff.
So were you in French-speaking Switzerland?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you were going to school while you were in Switzerland?
Yeah.
And working also? Or?
No, not working.
Okay.
School.
Okay. Cool. So you were there for 5 years in
Mhm.
Switzerland? Okay.
And I've been back here since 2008.
Okay. And you came back for health, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And...
Gluten. No.
Gluten?
Kidding.
Just celiac disease? Okay. And you returned to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
And what happened then?
Well, and I ran into the woman who's now my wife, who used to be my girlfriend when she was a little tiny person, because she was born also in Brookland and lived here until she was 5.
Okay.
And 2 days before I came back, she just happened. We had lost contact for 16 years. 2 days before she came back, she happened to friend me on Facebook, and then ask if no, she didn't friend me. She asked if I was the same person, and I said, well, yeah. And that's that. So that happened. There's some pictures right there.
Oh, of your
Yes, that's us.
your early courtship.
Yeah.
Nice. And so you now have your own home in
Yeah.
Brookland and are a gardener in your
Attempting
own right.
attempting to garden.
Okay.
Yes.
So how did that, was that always something you thought you would do when
Yes,
you had your own home?
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Without a
And
doubt.
how has that gone? What have you done?
Well, so the dirt here. Now we're only I don't know, 8 blocks from I'd have to figure out, but we're not far from my dad's house, less than a mile.
Yeah.
Probably like half a mile, maybe.
Yeah.
And the dirt here is completely different. So it's just it was kind of a shock, because over at his house they've always dealt with clay,
Yeah.
and we used to dig up the clay and make like figures and stuff, like for fun. And here it's sand, and so it's kind of a new fight.
Yeah.
But the first year wasn't great. That wasn't a real attempt. The second year we were here, so the first year I grew like a couple tomatoes and maybe an eggplant, and I didn't even get an eggplant.
Yeah.
But the second year I made quite a good garden. So we had a bunch of lettuce and spinach and kale and lots of tomatoes and other things, and that went really well. And then the year after, it went pretty well, but I had some jobs and other things, so it got a little off track. But now I'm finding that the things aren't really growing well, so I'm starting to address my soil, because I think what happened was I moved in here, it was all grass, and so I had maybe a little bit of nutrients in the soil, but I used those up when I grew, and I didn't add back a lot, and as gardeners will know, sandy soil will eat a whole bunch of organic matter. So I didn't add back in the huge quantities that I should have. I did put some, like, so I still did the techniques that my parents taught me, so mulching and using grass and stuff, but I don't think I did it in sufficient quantity. And then the other thing that I wasn't used to, because of my parents' yard is just completely different, is that here it dries out really, really dry, and maybe when we go outside later you'll see, especially since we've had such a droughty summer since June.
Yeah.
Like where the grass is, it's just, well, there's no grass really. It's just bone dry hard. So I'm not very used to that, and so I'm trying to think about my options about what I'm going to do for that without buying a sprinkler system or something, or watering all the time. Because so are we talking about my gardening now? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I started it off sort of with the whole beds idea. Maybe raise a little bit. You add, compost, of course, and then mulches and stuff like that. I had the fortune to read the One Straw Revolution, which of course came out when my parents were just buying their house.
The One Straw?
Yeah, One Straw. It's by Masanobu Fukuoka. He's a Japanese farmer, and his big thing is called Do Nothing Gardening, which is quite labor intensive, as anyone who's tried to do it knows. But so he's sort of a contemporary of Bill Mollison, the permaculture idea, but his ideas are a little different. And so what I'm trying to do now is sort of rebuild the soil in a more what really is more like permaculture. So I'm going to try and have stuff growing all the time, and then using, planting cover crops to use as green manures. And, like I just got a packet of daikon radish seeds, so we're going to use those. And so we're going to try and work on that. I'm talking to my sister who lives in Ohio, because she's well read on these subjects, and trying to figure out what's going on exactly, because I do have a lot of trees, but then it's very dry and the soil's hard, so we're trying to figure out maybe it's a dry forest condition or something like that. And I do want to do a little bit of, I've been looking a lot, I want to do a little bit of land shaping to try and keep every drop of water here instead of letting any of it escape. I haven't got rain barrels yet, but I think I'm going to. I saw an article in Mother Earth News once, which that kind of, well, whatever. but that I liked, which was the idea that instead of saving the water in the barrel, you save it in the ground. But the way you do that is you have it go into a barrel first, and then you have like hoses that slowly diffuse it onto the ground so that it doesn't run off.
Okay.
So I may try something like that instead of the barrel, but I'd probably get barrels too. But so really where I am right now is I know that I need to concentrate on my water, and then also build up organic matter, and so I've sort of, I know that I started in sort of a typical organic gardening mindset, and then now I found that I've shifted over to more of a permaculture, or some people call it edible forest type mindset, where I want things to be growing. I don't want to kill pests. I want to have maximum insects of all kinds. I know that I have to have water and all different kinds of plants and things like that in order to attract, to have as much nature. So what I'm trying to make it, what I really want is a wild place. So like I want what my mom sort of had, but even crazier. Yeah. So and I'd like to have mostly native things, and also the other idea I'm kind of working on is like I want to see what really wants to grow here and what grows here well, because some things just are too finicky. You know, sometimes we mess with things too much as humans because we like, we like that tomato and we want the bigger one all the time. But I want the things that really grow well, not necessarily this type of whatever.
And what have you discovered?
No, well, I'm very much in the process right now. So I don't know. I haven't discovered that much, except that you need to kill your cruciferous plants before it becomes spring again. That way the harlequin bugs go somewhere else.
Yeah. Cruciferous being like kales and broccolis.
Yeah.
To get them to move away.
Yeah.
Or they'll just stick around.
Right. Well, because they'll come. They come as the winter's setting on, and then they'll stay because you've got lots of mulch on your gardens.
Yeah.
They will hide and everything.
Yeah.
And then they come out in the spring and they eat all the cruciferous. So like you might have a nice looking kale plant, but then suddenly you've got these bugs. And I don't like killing any insects, and so for days I didn't kill them, and then I decided, okay, well today, I'm going to do it. And I went out, and about 4 times over the day I knocked them off in the soapy water, and I got every last one of them I could find. And like 4 days later, there were just as many. I couldn't believe it.
They're sneaky.
Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, I can't be doing it every day for
Yeah.
It's too much. Plus, I don't like killing the bugs, like I said. So
Because
I try to. I just don't. I don't kill anybody. I don't kill mosquitoes. So, but so they don't want to die.
Yeah.
So, but so that's sort of I'm trying to figure out how to do things in a way that the do nothing from the one straw revolution is the idea that anything we try and change from how nature does it is us trying to mess with something that already does what it does well. And some people might argue with it, but I kind of like the whole philosophy. So I want to have a nice feeling in my garden, not just like, oh, my tomatoes this big or whatever. So right now I'm dealing with not being very productive. Although I have like the largest asparagus I've ever seen. So
how big is it?
Well, the plants were over 9 feet tall, the ferns. And they're kind of fallen over. You can look at them now, but I have a picture. I had one that was still in the edible state.
Yeah.
That was it was either 2.5 feet tall, and it was like 1.25 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just humongous.
Do they taste good when they've gotten that big?
They're wonderful. Like nice. That's what I mean. It was still it was still great.
Yeah.
And so those are working well.
So it sounds like you're doing a lot of reading. What other are you finding native wisdom from other people, or in terms of finding what grows well here? Or just talk what are you?
Right.
How are you?
Well, so I do a lot of reading, and then I'm trying to see what's happening in my yard. But like I said, I've only been, so this is my third real year gardening here, where I'm actually putting in a good effort, and I think I have a lot more work to do on the level of the soil. So one thing I've learned is that the plants aren't nearly as important as the soil is, and so I'm trying to build that up. And the way I'm learning about it, so I read a lot of books, and I tried to read books on like different topics. So maybe like a soil book, not only a garden book.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to find people of the same mindset. So because not everybody thinks you shouldn't kill the bugs, or some people want to really build a bed up high. Some people want to have everything lined up in a row. Some people just like this. So it's kind of hard to find people in the same mindset. And people start talking about stuff like, oh well, mulch is too acidic. You can't use wood mulch on plants, and that, that's not. It's true certainly for the roots of seedlings, but it's not true if it's on top. And so it's hard to find people who have done or who really are in the same vein, right in the community without going to other meetings. However, I did last year. I think it was last year. This in November, we did Wangari Garden. Had a wild or native plant session. So I went over that with my neighbor. That was a good session, like just talking about what the native plants and why you want native plants and the insects and birds that are associated with them and all that kind of stuff. So I haven't done it yet because I do have a 1-year-old, but I'll probably be looking and trying to see if there are more programs like that around, because I know those are places that I can probably run into more people who are thinking along the same lines. So
who led that session?
that was the DC Department of Environment, I think, and they gave us plants too. So we got a couple plants in like a birdhouse.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, what were the kind of plants that they emphasized? Were they talking about edible?
Not edible. No,
Yeah.
this was. So what we were doing there is because Wangari Gardens got. I think they have what you were talking about, like a real co-op where you have to do some work and you get a plot. I'm not sure, but it looks like that from the outside.
Yeah, it's it's a collection of a lot of very small raised bed plots that you have to sign up for. And
But so we were really working on the outside of that to do a demonstration garden for wild. Like they wanted we were sort of volunteers to help them set up a wild or a native plant demonstration garden, and then also there were some trees that were planted up on the hill.
Yeah, they have that little orchard.
Right. So in the orchard we planted some stuff, and then down the garden we planted is down below the main garden. So in a line from the orchard, there's a little thing with asters and goldenrods and all sorts of. I don't actually know my plant name, so so I should be quiet now. But I'm like, oh yeah, that plant, I know that one. But I don't know why my mom always had all the names, and me they just don't stick. So I know my trees better, but but all the little. I'm very curious about what they are. Like why is this growing here? What is this? For instance, there's a nightshade plant that's all in my side yard with green berries that turn sort of yellow or brown as they mature, which is around now.
Yeah.
And what I really want to know is how is it like all over the place? It doesn't seem to have a spreading tuber root, or I don't know. So
some animal probably eats the berries and then.
Well, I was wondering about
poops it
that.
out somewhere else.
Because the berries are like always there. I never see them go, so I don't know. It'd have to be like ants or something, But so that's I'm always interested in that stuff. I find though that it's a lot harder to find information on the plants that are in your yard that you didn't plant than it is to find the ones that are sold in every garden center.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah.
But that's something I'd certainly like to look into, because I have a lot of violets growing in my yard, and I'm sort of the cult that thinks that a violet grows where it grows on purpose. Like there's a reason. For instance, dandelions grow where they grow because the soil needs something there, and because it's a place that's hospitable to a dandelion. And you sort of see that. My neighbor commented once, not Lori, another neighbor, that it's interesting every year to see what weeds grow. Because they're not the same from year to year. So if you just leave a place, it changes.
Yeah.
And so to me that says something about there's something going on. And it's kind of well known in vegetable gardening that if you have a certain nutrient deficiency, your plants will be more susceptible to insect pests, for instance. Like there's one, I forget what it is, but there's one where they overproduce nitrogen, which attracts insects which eat them, and then you have a problem. So since all the plants have different roles, like the dandelion has a very long tap root, and then violets have a weird sort of right? It's a rhizome, but it grows. It's not a huge root. So I don't know why I have so many violets, but it's got to be a sign of something. And so I wish I knew. I wish I had somebody to ask. Okay, what do I do? And then like, what is it adding back to the soil? USDA, I think, has some information on it. There's some I can't, or it might be a Forest Service site.
Yeah.
But they do have some of the plants, but they don't necessarily have tons of information, and some of it is very scientific.
Right.
So it's a little over my head.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my interest now as a gardener. Is I want to kind of wild my yard.
Yeah.
I don't like I don't want it to be wild in the sense of somebody just let this go.
Right.
But wild in the sense of like, there's lots of growth everywhere, but I know that there's also tons of work that goes into that. Like, for instance, bindweed just doesn't have a place in the yard. Bindweed.
Yeah.
I don't think is that.
Bermuda grass.
No. No, we'll have to.
Yeah.
It's a vine, and it grows up, and it has these little, sometimes white, sometimes green flowers, and then it grows a pod, like a milk poddy thing that splits open, and a million seeds come out, and then it's all, it's everywhere, and it'll grow like, an inch a day or more.
Right.
A foot a day.
Right.
So.
Well, that's pretty exciting. I mean, I can imagine that finding other people in DC who are kind of like actively thinking about that is
and
hard work.
You guys have something, so.
Yeah, for sure. But even like the permaculture mindset is pretty different from here's my plot with my rows and my, which is kind of how
more suitable for your square foot gardening.
Yeah. But there's a woman up at Mammoth Lee Garden where we are she has a whole permaculture thing, and it's funny, like, it's which of these things is not like the others. You walk by her plot and it's like, what is this weird old hippie doing with this? But it's cool. It's cool. She's trying something different.
Yeah. So, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't want to hear anything else you have to say about that, but I'm curious. We've talked about how you've done dabbled in beekeeping with the monastery, and so I'd be curious about that.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with that?
Well, the way I got involved was that I joined the garden guild more because I thought maybe I could find some garden knowledge, and then I had always I lived nearby, so I'd always gone there just to enjoy the gardens because they're nice. So I thought it might be nice, as a hobby, go out, be with some other people, do some gardening, and then I really like plants in the outdoors and all that stuff.
Yeah.
As we talked about. So I joined that, and then they asked, I didn't want to push into the beekeeping too much because everybody's interested in beekeeping. Everybody, they all want to know, so I kind of hung back. But then they asked, I did a lot of jobs for them that they want to get done, so I got to be known as sort of reliable person. And they asked for someone to start learning, about the bees in order to take over the role of beekeeping there. So
there was a beekeeping operation.
Well, there were some hives already, yes, and we were producing honey from those hives and then selling it in the gift shop.
Yeah.
But there's a few hives, and it was more like a hobby that was nice. We could sell some honey and make some money off it, in order to support the other activities of the guild, because here we are talking about organic gardening, because you have to spray the roses with insecticides and you have to put chemical fertilizers and all this stuff, because technically it's a monoculture of a very sort of non-robust plant.
Yeah.
So you have to do all these things to it. There is a lot of organic gardening methods, and they may actually be moving toward that at some point. We did talk about that one time.
Yeah.
I'll certainly support that.
How many people are
in the guild?
Yeah, helping out.
Well, it varies, but I would say there's about 20 people who are around.
Yeah.
So, but they're involved in different things. So
Yeah.
there's an herb garden up there in the main area, off to the right near the back. So they have like all sorts of different herbs, and then like apple tree, pomegranate, fig, pear, or something else. And then there's just other parts. Some people give tours of the gardens, and they'll actually here's a plug for us. They have free tours. Wow, I don't remember the time, but it's on the website. But and they'll take you back to the back where you can see the large greenhouse. You can go by the bees and see everything back there. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of a neat thing.
I've been in the greenhouse. It's
Have you?
trippy.
It's old. But
They let Neighborhood Farm Initiative. They let us.
are you the seed people?
Yeah.
Okay, so you just were with Joe Bozick? Or were you downtown yesterday? No? In Shaw?
Yes.
So Joe Bozick was there.
Yeah.
He's the one who started the bees at the monastery.
Okay.
So with him and Tony Vernon, who's the DCB woman.
Yes.
She's pretty
I've
fan.
emailed with Tony a little bit too.
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
But so she's kind of those are my mentors in beekeeping.
Okay.
So Tony's really into it, so she's like the person to talk to. Although she might talk too much, as much as I love her, she might. But so that I started, anyways, training with them in order to take over as the beekeeper, which happened this past year. But I have a 1-year-old, so it's a lot of work as a volunteer.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was there's another beekeeper who's much more advanced than I am. He's going to be going probably for his master beekeeping license or whatever it is. I'm not sure how that works. But to be a master beekeeper, and he's the one now who takes care. He does actually all the work with him, and I'm more of an organizational person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, although I have all this knowledge and experience of the bees now, so I have a lot. I don't have, I'm not an expert by any means, but it's fun to be able to tell people about bees and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Although interestingly, a side effect of being a beekeeper for the European honeybee is that I kind of feel like people should stop worrying about the European honeybee so much and start planting more diverse gardens that support the local pollinators, because the local pollinators can do all of it without the honeybee if you have a diverse area for them to live in.
Mm-hmm.
The honeybee is sort of it's more our tool.
Yeah.
So that's why they live in those weird boxes.
And we are there too.
For
right propagating themselves.
Yes,
but,
exactly.
But yeah.
Yes. But so that's been a weird change in my thinking about the honeybee. I mean, I love honey, and I think the bees are wonderful. I think they're neat, but I'm more interested in getting the hundreds, and I don't even know how many native pollinators there are out. Because when I look at my garden, most of the time it's not a honeybee that's doing the work. So, I mean, I don't have bees next door to my garden, but, a beautiful thing is to let a radish plant go to blossom, because they become these huge, gigantic plants with all these flowers, and then there's so many bugs all over them. It's just, it's really quite amazing. And then you get these neat seed pods that taste great in salads.
Radish seeds.
Yeah, but don't let them get too big though. You gotta get them when they're still small.
Huh.
It's like you eat the whole pod just as a green pod, and it tastes of radish but not too strong. My wife doesn't really like radishes, but she sure likes those pods.
Nice.
So, there's a tip for you.
That is a good tip. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. They also make a huge root that does a good aeration for your soil.
Like regular radishes? Like regular
old radish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So are you all trying to increase the bee operation over at the monastery, or?
They will be increasing it more. Yeah, they actually. So everybody's heard about all these collapses and stuff.
Yes.
We lost of the monastery's own bees. We lost all of them this past year. So we had 4 hives there were 9 hives on the property, but the other ones aren't ours. So we had 4 hives. We lost all of them.
Wow.
And there's different theories on what that is. I would not say it's colony collapse disorder, and in fact Tony Burnham doesn't think it is either.
Like,
it's not this. It's not what everybody's talking about. It's just
which is a thing.
Which is a thing, yeah. But I think it's a thing that has many causes, not one.
Yeah.
So it's not like people ask me, well, you know, it's the neonicotinoid. You know, they said that in the news. I said, well, you know, I think it's got so much to do with all sorts of things, including management of the honeybee hives. You know, what do they feed them? How are they treating them? What are all this stuff? It's just way too complex a thing to bring it down. I mean, this is my personal opinion. This is no, but and there's certainly also all the diseases they do. Well, like the mites that they do have, and there are certain diseases that they get. So, you know, that those play a huge role, but you know, I'm not going to speculate about what colony collapse is. Besides, I think it's probably lots of factors, not one factor. So we lost a lot of our bees, and then this beekeeper who I was mentioning before, luckily with bees you can split them and then revive the hives if you have a queen. So he revived all the hives, and now we have, I'm ashamed to say, but I don't know how many. It's more than 9. We probably have like 12 on the property, or 13. And we have to see how it works. There are plans to expand, but the beekeeper has to be cognizant of the fact that a certain radius, because that's how the bees work, so a radius from their hive can only support a certain amount of bees. So you can't just cram all the bees you want onto one piece of property and expect them to have food, especially because there's a back area of the monastery just grass.
Yeah.
So there's this huge field, you know, it's just grass. And the trees aren't even, a lot of the trees in that grass aren't good bee trees.
Yeah.
So there are a lot where the bees are that are like tulip poplar. That's one of the biggest honey producers, and black locust. But so that's I think right now what we're doing is stabilizing. We're going to see what the honey yield is next year, and then after that we'll decide if we're going to do more hives or what. It also depends on how the situation works out with the beekeeper, if he stays, if he goes.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, as the master beekeeper, I went to the board and said, for a volunteer position, this is too much work, because it's very, you know, it's not like plants where you can just sort of forget about it, or you know, maybe come back and fix it, and you know, you have to do stuff at the right time in the right order, and you have to have a pretty big knowledge, or a pretty good knowledge of how hives work, what to do in a problem. So it's really a job. It's not, you know. So that's why I tried to get some way and, you know, get them money. So I'm going to contract with this guy.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So are you connected to a community of beekeepers in DC?
I'm on the through Tony Burnham started a DC beekeepers list.
Yeah.
And so I have contact with them, but I'm not as deep because of we just had a baby last year during the summer, when my first year of being the head. I'm not as deep into that as I could have been, but there are lists for beekeepers. There's all sorts. There's classes out at there are classes in Montgomery County. Tony sometimes hosts a class for home beekeepers.
Yeah.
Because it is now legal in DC to keep bees. All the bureaucracy around it hasn't been finalized, but eventually people will have to register their hives. Hives can only be of 2 types, which is the regular box Langstroth hive, or a top bar hive, which I know I and some other people helped push to get into the legislation because it wasn't there. And there will have to be hive inspections, and I'm sure there'll be a fee of some kind.
Right.
But it has been signed and passed by Congress, so people can keep bees.
It had to go up to Congress.
Yeah,
Wow.
all our laws.
Yeah. Yep. Nice. Well, we can wrap this up. So I'm curious, how are you kind of full time doing a lot of this, or did you have another job?
I'm full time taking care of
Full-time
my daughter,
parent,
who's
okay.
smiling at me right now.
Oh,
Hey, baby.
that's a full time job.
Yeah, and then I actually work more as a handyman when I have free time. So, although I'm doing woodworking too, custom.
Okay. So does that having a job that isn't necessarily a go to the office 40 hours
Right.
a week kind of job
It helps facilitate it sometimes, the gardening.
Sure.
On the other hand,
Yes.
when you're self-employed, you have to be like, wait a second, shouldn't I be making money instead of working in my garden? So it's kind of, I have to try that's the other thing I'm really trying to work on with my garden is I need to make sure that my time input and my yield makes sense so that I am saving my family money on those vegetables.
Have you hit that sweet spot?
No, especially not without that. But I'll be getting there. I think, like I said, I need to do a lot of the soil improvement.
Yeah.
Try and get my wild yard running. I think I'm hoping like next year I'm gonna do a lot of work in this fall.
Yeah.
Doing a little bit of earth moving.
Yeah.
Adding a lot of stuff, and then hopefully next spring. And I have stuff to plant, so I'm gonna throw it. It's been a little hot. I put in some peas back when it was cool, and then it got like 90, and the peas went no. But I have some alfalfa, some buckwheat, and some daikon that I'm going to plant now.
Yeah.
Because I just need to get things growing.
Yeah.
Sort of is the idea. But, yeah.
Is there anything else that we didn't talk about in terms of your life here in DC, your experience as a food grower?
I don't think so. Okay. I really enjoy it, and I like doing it in the city too because it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Although I find there are things one runs into in the city that one might not in other places. For instance, like we were talking about a lack of organic material. You have to get it from somewhere else because you don't have trees right next to you falling down, or you don't have cows or whatever or hay. So it's a little harder to get my what do you call it?
Your brown matter and your green matter and your...
Well, I was thinking more like my working materials.
Yeah.
It's harder to just get the stuff because not that we don't have access to it. It's just you have to go somewhere else and get it and maybe pay money for it, and sometimes it's hard. So
yeah. Did you ever go get horse manure from the
stables?
The
No.
stables?
No. I stay away from that a little bit. I would use chicken manure maybe, but I'm not trying to use it. I have relatives who have done it, but the only reason I would use the chicken manure is to add a little bit of nitrogen for the browns. But I don't want to do too much of that. So
Yeah.
What I would really like is I want them to pass a law so that we have chickens, and then I'll have a coop that I'll move from place to place, and they'll eat bugs and fertilize, and that'll be good. But only a couple chickens.
Someday. Hopefully.
They're working on it though, just so if people they're working on that with the Sustainable DC Act. They're gonna try and there's a big I don't remember where online, but there's a plan of what they're gonna try and introduce, and one of them is chickens.
Nice.
So they're also making compost legal because I didn't know that it was illegal, but there you go.
I'm not surprised. I always knew that. I don't think I knew either. Like to have like a bin outside was this city.
It attracts rodents. So, but
all right. Tony, thanks so much. I appreciate
you're very
it.
welcome.
Yes.
Thanks for your interest.
You bet.
We went a